well as key officials from within the civil service. This morning, we have with us Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable Sean Richards. We have the Honorable Eric Evelyn. We have the Honorable Jonelle Powell, the Honorable Lindsay Grant, and the Honorable Vincent Byron. We are also joined by Ambassador, His Excellency Michael Powell. We have with us Senator and Deputy Speaker, Dr. Bernicia Nisbet, as well as Permanent Secretary, Mr. Osman Petty, Permanent Secretary Ron Collins, Permanent Secretary Elrita Simpson-Brown, Permanent Secretary Andrew Skerritt. We also have with us Accountant General Levi Bradshaw, Chief Personnel Officer Sheridane Warner. We have with us the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hazel Laws, Medical Chief of Staff, Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, as well as Senior Assistant Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Dr. Trisha Esdale. We have the Director of Fisheries here with us, Mr. Mark Williams. We have the Commissioner of Police of the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force, Hilroy Brandy. Commissioner of Police Hilroy Brandy. We have the Commander of the St. Kitts and Nevis Defence Force, Lieutenant Colonel J. Anthony Comrie. We are also joined by the National Security Advisor in the Ministry of National Security, Major General Retired Stuart Saunders. And we have the Director of Statistics here with us as well, Mr. Carlton Phipps, as well as the Director of the Skills Training Empowerment Program, also known as STEP. I think we have some additional civil servants here who are very instrumental to the various processes in government, and they are here to lend their support where necessary. So thank you all for coming. I also want to use this opportunity to thank the members of the media who are here. Allow me to give special mentions to those providing live coverage of this event. This press conference is being carried live on ZIZ Television and Radio, Win FM, Freedom FM, Sugar City FM, and Vaughan Radio, as well as the Facebook pages of ZIZ and the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service, also known as SKNIS, as well as their YouTube channels rather. Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris uses this forum to update the country on matters of national importance. This press conference also provides representatives of the various media houses an opportunity to ask questions on behalf of their various audiences and raise concerns or issues that would have been discussed on their various programs. At this time, I would like to welcome the Prime Minister to the lectern. He will make an opening presentation, following which we will field questions from the representatives of the various media houses who are here. I need to mention, I don't know if she's been here before, Mrs. Michelle Jacobs-Christmas, who is joining us today, and she's providing a very critical service by translating what the Prime Minister says to sign language. We're happy to have her here with us, and I'm happy to invite the Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris, to the lectern. Let's welcome him.
Good morning. Let me thank all who are tuning to this press conference, and of course to salute my fellow citizens and residents. I am of course very pleased to update our citizens and residents on some important matters of state. These press conferences play an important role in our democracy, and they are an opportunity for your government to take you into its confidence and provide you with accurate and factual information on the issues that matter to you. Even as my government continues to keep people safe and secure, we are very mindful to delicately balance the tension between lives and livelihoods as a consequence of the dangerous COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19, and more particularly its management, consequences, and recovery from its debilitating tentacles are foremost on the minds of everyone in every corner of the globe. To date, 1.93 billion vaccine doses have been administered worldwide. At a glance, this appears to be significant progress being made in the fight against the deadly virus, as the vaccine has proven to be the best defense against this formidable enemy, COVID-19. On closer examination, we see that there remains a great inequity in vaccine distribution globally, as some countries are yet to administer a single dose. 85% of all doses administered globally have been to persons from high and upper middle income countries. Doses administered in low income countries have been less than 1%. Despite the global shortage of vaccines, my government has been able to secure more than 40,000 doses in the first instance to protect the people of this, my beloved federation. Our vaccine rollout started on or about February 22nd, 2021, and during the last 3 months, we have seen great and commendable success. As at Wednesday, June 3rd, 28,556 doses have been administered in our federation. 62.5% of adults over the age of 18 have received at least one shot of the AstraZeneca vaccine. In addition, 24%, or 7,920 adults, are now fully vaccinated, having received their 2 doses. With the vaccine providing significant protection against COVID-19 and significant risk reduction from severe disease, hospitalization, and deaths, we are well positioned in this leg of the fight against the pandemic. Across the globe, every single country went into community spread with mounting COVID-19 cases and deaths. Our health professionals repeatedly warned that despite our best efforts, it was only a matter of time before the virus got into our communities, and we needed to prepare individually and collectively for this eventuality. Here in the Federation, we were prepared for the inevitable, which was community spread. It is your responsibility to use the non-pharmaceutical measures such as social distancing, hand sanitizing, and wearing a mask to protect yourself and others. Your government procured vaccines to protect you and those who are unable to protect themselves. It is the best defense we have in our arsenal in the ongoing war against COVID-19. I am happy so many of our citizens and residents have heeded the call and came out in their numbers to be vaccinated. Kitishans and Nivishans continue to exercise good judgment in protecting themselves, their loved ones, and their communities. So far, more than 62% of the nation's adults sent a strong message that they listened to the facts, they believed in the science, and they went forward to be vaccinated. They understood that in a pandemic, time wasted could result in lives lost. In addition to the fight against the novel coronavirus, we have been fighting another pandemic, best described as the pandemic of misinformation, false information, willfully and maliciously peddled by some locally and abroad to retard the progress we have made for their own personal agenda and selfish short-term political gains must, of course, be condemned. I am happy that so far, more than 60% of the adult population simply said no to the misinformation and propaganda. They did the altruistic act of getting vaccinated, not just to protect themselves, but to protect all of us. We will continue to educate and vaccinate our people, as this is the best defense against the deadly coronavirus. Our public education and COVID-19 has been the most elaborate and convenient, engaging persons in their communities, at churches, at their workplaces, by regular briefings and through hotlines. We have adopted an all-of-society approach, and everyone's constructive effort is always, I repeat, always welcomed. The task force has engaged every interested entity, including sport associations, hoteliers, political parties, among others. Ours is a life-first strategy. We have seen that millions around the world have lost their lives to this virus. Indeed, the latest count, over 3 million persons have lost their lives. Over 500,000 have died from COVID in the greatest and most powerful country in modern times, the United States of America. Well, I want to thank the Almighty God that not a single life has been lost to COVID-19 thus far in this, our blessed federation. To God we must all give thanks and praise. We believe that life is precious, and we will do all within our power to protect every life. We encourage you to continue to go forward in your numbers to be vaccinated at the 17 health centers across St. Kitts and Nevis. These are open from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m., and you will be welcome there. We currently have one of the highest vaccination rates globally, and this is a great achievement of which we should all be proud. My government will continue in its quest to secure more vaccines so that we can reach the goal of herd immunity in the not-too-distant future, thus restoring normalcy to our beautiful federation. Indeed, as we speak, our Minister of Health is engaged in a regional meeting in which the matter of vaccines availability becomes a critical matter for the discussion. When the history of this pandemic is written, there are some names, some well-known and some not so well-known and some unknown, that will be forever etched for their yeoman service in this fight against COVID-19. I want at this juncture to thank all involved in this fight, as everyone's contribution is significant. Those in the leadership of the COVID-19 Task Force, the Health Emergency Operating Committee, frontline healthcare workers, especially our community nurses, frontline workers along the corridor of containment, including those in law enforcement, such as our police, immigration, customs, transportation, and workers in the hospitality and tourism industry. I say thank you very much for your contribution. Thanks also to those in the media, helping to educate and inform the public. Most importantly, you, the general public, for your adherence to the prescription of non-pharmaceutical measures, and who are now stepping forward yourselves to be vaccinated, I say thank you to you too. I want to turn now to the matter of our economic recovery and, of course, issues of interest to the wider society. My government has successfully opened up all major sectors of the economy. I will now examine the situation of our main economic drivers in brief. Turning to the manufacturing sector, most of the workers in our manufacturing plants have returned to their jobs. A recent review of employment data reveals that over 1,166 persons are back to work in the manufacturing industry. The main export manufacturing entities are all operating at different levels of capacity, of course. At Jaro, 230 employees are at work. At API Harrisova, 112. At Carrie Brewery, 155. Electrofab, 65. Sun Island Close, 70. Cajola Cristada, 168. Demerara Distillers, 7 employees. Caribbean Magnetics, 20. Brush Limited, 35 employees, to name a few of the entities. Our manufacturing and export enclave is critically important. To date, we remain the single largest exporter of merchandise to the USA among all member states of the OECS, including Barbados. This is significant, and we want to maintain that export potential of our manufacturing sector. Beyond employment, the manufacturing sector has been contributing to foreign exchange with exports for the period January to April 2021, totaling just over $33 million, compared to $27.9 million for the comparative period of 2020. This represents an increase of 18%. This, of course, is good news. I turn to the fisheries and agriculture sector. Indeed, in the broader classification of agriculture by the Food and Agriculture Organization, fisheries is subsumed under agriculture, and agriculture generally then must be construed to embody crops, livestock, fisheries, and forestry. Overall, fish landings over the period January to April 2021 totaled 275,000 pounds, with a value of just over $3 million. This represents an 87% increase from the prior year, were just under 150,000 pounds for those 4 months of the year, and with a value of $1.2 million. For this year then, for the first 4 months, we are recording a near threefold increase in the dollar value of fish landed here. I want to commend the Ministry of Agriculture and our Director of Marine Resources, who is here with us today. Year on year, January to April, the comparative period, 2020 versus 2021, reef and demersal fishery increased by 97%. Coastal pelagic fishery increased by 70%. Ocean pelagic fishery decreased by 7%. Conch fishery increased by 26%. And the most significant was lobster production, which increased by 334% over the same period, January to April. The number of registered fishers stood at an all-time high at 1,277 at the end of April 2021. I want to repeat, that in this our small federation, we have 1,277 registered fishers. The statistic at the end of April 2021 represented an addition of 102 registered fishers over the total at the same period end, April 2020. These, in my view, are positive signs of a fisheries sector on the rise, aided by my government's stimulus packages, which have assisted fishers with fishing gears, including fish spot wires, fishing aggregate devices, and many other supports. During the period under review, overall, our livestock production increased by approximately 66% in 2021 when compared to the comparative period of 2020. The combined value of livestock commodities increased from just under $500,000 in 2020 to $760,322 in 2021. Again, we are looking at the first quarter in the context of livestock output. The increase was attributed to the provision of resources made available through the COVID-19 stimulus package for the agricultural sector, and we have extended that stimulus by $5 million for the budget year 2021. During the period under review, overall crop production fell by about 10%. Despite this decline, significant gains were realized in cabbage, cantaloupe, onion, sweet potato, tomato, watermelon, and yam production. Cucumber production remains steady. I want to remind all of us to continue, or to start if we haven't yet been doing so, to support our farmers and fishers by buying local produce. At the same time, I want to remind our farmers and fishers to do the best they can on prices and quality. It's always a good strategy at times to reduce the price and make your customers happier. Long live our farmers and fishers. Turning briefly to the tourism sector, the cruise tourism will get started shortly, and we expect a much better summer season for cruise than last year. Indeed, last year we had the total lockdown during the summer period, and so cruise tourism literally disappeared. For this year, we have several visits on record, which are expected to begin shortly. In terms of education tourism, this is still strong, with over 1,000 students already repatriated to St. Kitts and Nevis to pursue their studies. This, of course, means more income for landlords, for operators of buses, for restaurateurs, and all the variety of businesses which these students and their professors would patronize. Movie making will be consolidated in St. Kitts and Nevis, and interestingly, we have been able to host one principally at the Park Hyatt facility below deck, and the anticipation is that 6 will be produced by MSR Productions. When we asked Philip why he had chosen St. Kitts and Nevis as the top place to begin the filming of his movies, he said he was pointed to Barbados, and indeed he was in Barbados when he finalized his decision. He had been pointed to the Dominican Republic, which has an excellent record in film production, and he had been pointed elsewhere. What was the deciding factor, he said to us, was our success in the management of COVID-19. COVID-19, in the end, gave us many challenges and difficulties. but it has provided us now with an opportunity to build out a movie-making industry. So this is one of the upside, if there is any, that we could point to coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. Several hotels are on track to open in the latter quarter of 2021. Of course, that will bring some permanent jobs to those who have an interest in working in that industry. Turning to the construction sector, which is one of the most significant contributors to our economic growth, we are encouraged by the increasing confidence of our private sector in the economy. We are well aware that TDC's Joa's housing project is moving apace. The luxury villa project at the Royal St. Kitts Hotel is progressing well, and ground has been broken on the start of Plaza 2 at the Royal St. Kitts Hotel in Frigate Bay. The St. Kitts Cooperative Credit Union is soon to start a housing project at Douglas Estate. In fact, it was expected to have been launched, I think, earlier this week or last week, but an account of the resurgence of the COVID-19, the principals determined that they will postpone the groundbreaking event. The project, of course, like all projects, will receive my government's full support. Our cabinet on Monday considered an exciting support development project for Eastern Port Sante involving inter alia, a car park development, marina, and hotels. There is still much more to be done on this project before it becomes ready for formal action by Cabinet, but the concept is a good and interesting one. It shows the continuing attractiveness of St. Kitts and Nevis to investors. Indeed, these private sector projects will be complemented by our public sector capital projects. I have some more good news to share. Wellington Road's apartments are now set for allocation in the not-too-distant future. 24 apartments have been built with the strong support of PDV St. Kitts Nevis Limited, which provided grant and loan financing. In a similar vein, we anticipate that the Petrocasas housing project in Mansion, which is also being constructed by grant funding, would be ready for allocation in the not-too-distant future. I want to turn to some labor issues, and for the record to reiterate that the Team Unity government has been a model employer. I am pleased to report that despite the financial and economic challenges resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis has been able to fulfill its payroll obligations to all of its employees, including both monthly and weekly paid, and to all pensioners. Indeed, this government has not laid off a single employee on account of COVID-19. My government's payroll supports some 3,908 monthly paid employees, 1,124 government auxiliary employees, 1,346 pensioners, over 6,400 persons directly depend on their government paycheck month after month. To this burden, we must add, while the total payroll disbursement by the government and St. Kitts and Nevis from January to May, covering these three categories, monthly paid employees, government auxiliary employees, and pensioners, is a whopping $115,960,000. $399 and $399,183.25. I'm not too sure why the Accountant General gave me with that precision. So to make it more simple, the total payroll from January to May 2021 is $115.4 million. You add to that the STEP programs, which employs around 3,000 persons, and the bill for the year so far is another $21 million. And all this is taking place in the context of a significant decline in the inflows from taxes as a result of, for example, our stimulus package, where we waive certain taxes, where we reduce some by as much as 50% in the case of unincorporated business tax, we reduce corporation tax by some 28% or thereabout. In the context of those reduction in taxes, the government continues to carry on its payroll close to 10,000 persons in St. Kitts and Nevis. And for over 12 months, not one day did we miss paying them. This is our story of prudent fiscal management from 2015 to the present. Prudent fiscal management. Across the globe, COVID-19 accounted for the equivalent of 255 million job losses. Thankfully, in St. Kitts and Nevis, our citizens and residents displaced by COVID-19 have access to a range of some 20 social safety net supports, including food vouchers, school meal programs, poverty alleviation program, support services for foster children, medical assistance program, distinct and a part of the compulsory free access to health care at all of our community centers for young people and for the elderly, including access to dental services free of cost in St. Christopher and Nevis. Assistance with school uniforms, books and examination fees paid for by this government, even in the context of a most dangerous pandemic that has turned even the most powerful country upside down. For 2021, we have budgeted about $35 million for the social safety net relief and public assistance. Most popular being, of course, the Poverty Alleviation Program, which we introduced in 2018 to provide income support to those households which were in dire need. For the year so far, January to May, the popular PAP program, as it's called, has paid out $13.4 million. And since the program started in December of 2018 up to May 31st, 2021, the total amount processed by the Accountant General is $70.3 million. No other government before us has been as generous in its support to the working poor and as astute in its fiscal management. To date, 2,892 severance claims have been received by the Federal Labor Department on behalf of employees both on the island of Nevis and on the island of St. Kitts. To date, the total number of severance claims processed is 2,107, of which 2,042 have already been paid as at the 31st May, according to the reports I have from our Labor Commissioner. And she advised that 65 are pending. The total amount paid out for severance payments by the federal government is a whopping $33.4 million as at May 31st, 2021. $22 million has been paid out from the federal purse to employees who work at entities in St. Kitts, and $11 million had been paid out to employees who worked at entities on the island of Nevis. Had it not been for the competent fiscal management of our public finances, we would never have been able to disburse $33.4 million at a time when the government's revenues have been significantly reduced as a consequence of the pandemic. I must commend the Labor Department for its work so far. Never before have so many claims been processed by the department. I thank the severed employees for their patience. For many of them, they have displayed Job's patience. The good news is that the majority of them have now had their claims processed and paid. There is light at the end of the tunnel, with only about 59 claims submitted in 2020, which are yet to be finalized for a number of reasons, including lack of information, including the fact that some of the employers are disputing the conditions of work, etc., and all these matters have to be finalized. The Labour Commissioner has assured me that her staff is working very hard to complete all outstanding matters. In closing, just a reminder that the Unity Government will celebrate its anniversary by joining the congregation at the Wesley Methodist Church on Seaton Street, Barstair, for service this Sunday, 6 June, at 9 a.m. It was about 1 year ago when the people of St. Kitts and Nevis restored their faith in the Team Unity administration and the significant accomplishments that had occurred under our watch for the last 5 years. We give God thanks for the opportunity to serve our people. And we will worship with those at the Wesley Methodist Church this Sunday at 9 a.m. There was a prior announcement which indicated that we would have worship in the Green Tree area at Pastor Hensville Church for reasons associated with the management of COVID-19. We have changed location to another church with a larger space. So, do not go to the Faith Tabernacle Church this Sunday. In fact, the church is closed. We will go to Wesley Methodist, 9 a.m. Finally, the Centenarians' Day was recently being celebrated worldwide, and I want to extend Cabinet's best wishes for the continuing well-being of all our centenarians in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. I will now pause to take any questions from the media.
Good morning. Devon Cornelius, 1FM. What is the decision on this Casper vaccination requirement? And according to Commissioner Brandy, at the January 14th press conference, the death of the customs officer and the woman from Halfway Tree that was reportedly found hanging, he said these files are pending before the magistrate's court for a coroner's inquest. What is the status of that? Thank you.
Good morning, Glenn Bart from SKN Newsline. Mr. Somehow, some believe that the state has in some way contributed to a situation with regards to workers. The claim is made that without declaring that the vaccine is mandatory, government in some way has supported private sector companies in creating a situation where workers met with penalties if they do not decide to vaccinate. That's my first question. What is the implication with regards to that particular position? My second question relates to the fact that between June 9th and the 22nd, the IMF will be involved. The IMF will be involved in the annual consultation. But we recall that I think back in 2018, there was a situation in which the government did not approve the publishing of the report of that last team. What does this mean? Has that situation been resolved? And secondly, going forward, what implications does it have with regards to the issue of transparency on information which we believe the public should have? And one more question for now. Going forward, we see the impact 19 on the economy. What will the government focus on as it goes through the recovery process? What do you want the private sector to do in support of the government's effort to bring the recovery into a sustainable situation? Those are my questions for now.
A pleasant good morning to everyone. My name is Shanique Harvey from ZIZ News. Now that community spread is confirmed in the country, will it delay the official reopening of the country in October? And secondly, for persons who received their first dose of the vaccine from the final batch, if the time for the second shot elapse by the time the Federation gets received another batch of the vaccine, will those persons need to start the vaccination process all over again, or will it just be them getting their second shot? Thank you.
Thank you.
Rashan Dixon, thank you, serious observer. How, with community spread confirmed now in St. Kitts and Nevis, how would that affect our ability to welcome cruise ships coming up as early as next month, and as well as hosting CPL and other major events?
Let me thank the media rep for the questions put. The matter to do with the coroner's inquest, the commissioner is here, and so he would follow up with respect to that one. The matter to do with the SCASPA vaccination requirement, the minister responsible is the Honorable Lindsay Grant. He will address that one. The matter raised with respect to private companies and imposing penalties on workers that did not vaccinate, I am not sure that there's any formal complaint before the Department of Labor. The minister responsible, the Honorable Wendy Phipps, says that they have none. So we can't substantiate that claim. We make the point that for safety in the workplace, everyone should be encouraged to be vaccinated. We make the point that those who are at workplaces who are vaccinated, they are in fact concerned that some of their fellow workers, for no good reason known to them, have determined that they will not take the vaccines. They will not afford themselves of the protection, and therefore that refusal would put every other employee at risk. So there has to be a balancing act. Clearly, every employer must undertake such actions that are reasonably required to protect the safety of his or her workplace. The government has never had any meeting with any private entity in which they discuss their specific initiatives to, as it were, deal with the situation of hesitancy at the workplace. We encourage every employer to do their utmost best to ensure that every employee is vaccinated. Similarly, the government itself has urged all of its employees to get vaccinated, to protect themselves, to protect their families, to protect their co-workers, to protect all of us, and eventually to help us get the economy back on a proper footing in the not too distant future. And persons are working along that. So that is the situation with respect to that. I want to make it absolutely clear that my government will never support, and I personally will never support, any injustice against any worker, whether in the public sector or the private sector. I grew up with a father who was a trade unionist, a father who taught me how to take notes of the grievance at the workers, as he would have gone forward each October to present the case of the sugar workers with whom he worked at every conference of the labor union. So I understand. I have a feel for an injustice, and I will never support an injustice against an employee. So that is my personal stance on it. The government itself has been deliberating on this matter, and the government is awaiting a policy position from the Attorney General. Every statutory corporation and every entity of the government would therefore be required to wait the determination of the government, because the cabinet has to provide the lead. And every state enterprises owe an inescapable connection by law to the government that in a sense is the only shareholder of these entities. But in this country, we cannot be indifferent to what is taking place all over the world. In this country, we cannot be forgetful that when this virus came way back in March 2020, the advice was we continue with our non-pharmaceutical measures, and that the only way we were going to protect ourselves and our country from devastation by COVID-19 was through vaccination. That still remains the answer, the most powerful tool in the arsenal in this war, because COVID-19 represents an existential threat to our lives. It's over 3 million persons have died, and where the vaccines have applied, as they have been under the Biden administration, we have seen significant control in the pervasiveness of the COVID-19. And therefore we encourage all, but time is not on our side. We have fared very well in being able, for example, to hold the COVID-19 at bay by closing our borders, refusing entry to cruise ships, putting the country on lockdown. We did all that to stave off the challenge to our health system, because everywhere in India right now, they would be happy to have a ventilator. In St. Kitts right now, we have an excess of those things, because we were able to do the right things at the right time. always conscious that eventually the virus will come, because we keep saying so long as the virus is anywhere, it is everywhere. So long as people are moving, so long as transboundary activities are taking place between nations, you can't be absolutely free. We see what happened in St. Martin. People died. In Antigua, people died. In St. Lucia, people died. In Jamaica, thousands of people died. In Trinidad, people died up to this week. This is danger. And for our people not to recognize the seriousness of the danger would be a disappointing indictment against them and against all of us. So you in the media must be encouraging people to do the right thing and not play up to people's excitements and people's effort to undermine the success of what is very necessary if we are to get back our freedom, our economic freedom, our political freedom in the fullest expression, meaning we could go anywhere without limits once we are abiding within the law. The COVID-19 challenges all of those things if we are to save some of us from the ultimate consequence, which is death. So far, we have done well. In relation to the matter of the IMF report that has been answered over and over, the IMF report was not accepted by the financial team in the Ministry of Finance. The financial secretary herself explained the inaccuracies over which she had to contend with the report. And as a result, she advised the cabinet that we should not accept it. We are not such a poor country dependent on the IMF for loans and every other things, that if the IMF came to us with something over which we were unhappy, we will say, yes, we are happy, so sign it off. We have had technical advice. We went to other members of the constituency in which we are involved, sought their advice, and they advised us to stay put in relation to our particular stance. I myself have met with the leadership of the IMF new and past in relation to that matter, and they, in their way, apologize for those particular developments. And we are all committed that we will work better going forward to overcome the intransigence which we had experienced so long ago. That is the past. The IMF has come into the country this year. This is 3 years. So there is nothing to gain by going to recap 2018, nothing to gain by the IMF, other than they say their posture will be different, other than to say that they have a new leadership to engage the countries, other than to say we are not the only country to have had difficulties with reporting. And those countries took a similar position. And when I asked my colleagues about it, they said, well, IMF not elected to run your country. And certainly at that time, I had already started, I think by the time we had paid them off too, the $200+ million and $34 million which the former administration had paid to them. So they had nothing to hold us captive. Fiscal policy had become truly sovereign and free because of the way we had managed the country. So we have no difficulty with them, neither do they with us. That matter is settled, as it were, long ago, and we are moving forward in a healthy relationship with the IMF. Indeed, I have been involved in significant panels with them. They have called me to some. I didn't have the time because the exigencies of managing this small, complex country have overweighed me, and I therefore did not have time to deal with some of the matters in which they wanted us to provide leadership. In terms of the private sector effort, the private sector of the country is critical in getting the country back to work. The private sector should be the springboard from which new ideas would spring, new opportunities are realized, and a consistent devotion to constructive engagement in national development should come from. And that is why even in our management of the COVID-19, we involve the private sector as part of the all-of-society approach. We have had an excellent relationship with the private sector, not only at the level of the chamber, at the level of individual entities. Our first, for example, quarantine site was OTI, private sector support. OTI said they gave us the best price. We negotiated and we asked for an even better than the best price. We have had an excellent relationship. We had several other hotel properties made available to us as we fought this pandemic and needed space, and we still do need space. So the relationship has been an excellent one. We have had several meetings with them. In fact, recently, could be this year, if memory serves me well, we met over at Jakarta Hotel with the private sector, and we engaged them. And at the head table, Ms. Giselle Brisbane was there making presentations on behalf of the chamber. I am heartened, though, and I mentioned a number of projects we have started with the private sector support, such as the Joas residential development that is taking place, the new villa development that is taking place at what we would properly call, though inappropriate, is Jakarta Hotel. And we mentioned, for example, the private sector action at that same facility with the build-out, well, the groundbreaking ceremony of a second plaza. I mentioned just now the credit union is going to start their housing development. All those are signs of the public sector understanding the need for them to do what they can to put the country back to work and to seize opportunities, because we have to live with the COVID-19. It will not just disappear over the next couple of days or the next months. So we have to keep ourselves safe by getting immunized, and therefore we could go about doing our business as near normal as we possibly can. There will be other discussions with the Chamber of Industry, with the small businesses. In fact, just yesterday, myself, the Attorney General, the Deputy Prime Minister, and Minister Hamilton met with the Contractors Association. According to them, it was a wonderful meeting. I felt so too, but those were their words. So we have been engaging them in constructive conversation about the role they can play in nation development and in the immediate future in the recovery process. That is going to continue. What I would like to see is really more investment leading to more jobs. More jobs mean more incomes, mean our people can go about doing the things that they would normally must do. And they can be a happier people in St. Kitts and Nevis. So, commendation to all in the private sector. The Shami, do I get it right? Shami Clark? Shanique Harvey. I'm so sorry, but it's a lovely name. So Ms. Harvey asked the question in relation to the vaccines and the time frame. We have several doctors here, but the lead personalities in this matter would be our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hazel Laws, and we have Dr. Cameron Wilkerson, whose names have already been etched in the history of the first chapter in terms of the pandemic. I would invite them to come forward to deal with those issues, the issue of community spread, how does it affect the cruise ship? When Minister Grant comes, she will address that. But just to say again, life continues even in all of this. And St. Kitts and Nevis, among all independent states, has the best record in the region in managing COVID-19. The cruise ships are going to Barbados. People died there. They had community spread. They had spread in the prison. They had it everywhere. They are going to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. People died there. They had their share of clusters and community spread. Community spread is part of the natural projection in the life of the virus. They had it in the United Kingdom. They have had it in Europe. It is everywhere. As I said, it's part of the natural trajectory, and it's a question of how long you can contain its movement from one stage to another. We have our health experts. They will deal with that and any other related question on the vaccine. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Before I comment regarding the vaccines, I just want to use this opportunity to provide an update to those present and the population at large regarding our present COVID-19 status in the Federation. Now, between the dissemination of the last release by the Ministry of Health yesterday and the present, so in other words, within the last 24 hours, we have recorded one additional case of COVID-19. This new case is a national and is hereon referred to as case 75. The individual is in isolation at a COVID-19 certified facility. This case brings the total number of COVID-19 confirmed cases to 75, with 61 cases for St. Kitts, 14 cases for Nevis. Please note that 48 cases have fully recovered with 0 deaths. There is now 27 active cases. There are now 27 active cases. These patients are stable and they are being monitored. I want to just add that between May 19th and yesterday, June the 2nd, a total of 3,014 samples, COVID-19 samples, COVID-19 RT-PCR tests have been processed by our local laboratories. And of the 3,014 samples, 30 returned positive. So at present, we are noting a positivity rate of 0.9%. And so that's good. And so, ladies and gentlemen, the Ministry of Health, the St. Kitts Nevis National COVID-19 Task Force, we are working assiduously to contain this wave of COVID-19 cases. Our robust contact tracing process continue. We continue to identify cases. They're placed in isolation, and their contacts are identified and placed in quarantine. We are also conducting targeted testing. Our Honorable Prime Minister just shared that 62.5 or 63% of the target population is already covered with 1 dose, and 24% of the target population fully vaccinated or covered with 2 doses. Now, with respect to the specific question about vaccination, so individuals who would be showing up at the health centers this afternoon, June 3rd and beyond, you will be given, if you are a new acceptor, you will be provided your first dose, and then you will be given an appointment, a 12-week appointment to return for your second dose. And we are confident that within that time period, we would receive the next batch of vaccines. So I repeat, as of today and beyond, any new acceptors, persons accepting the vaccine for the first or receiving their first dose, you will be given an appointment, a 12-week appointment, to return for your second dose. And we are confident that we would have the next batch of vaccines prior to that. Now, there are a number of persons who are holders of appointments for their second dose. Their second doses are in the refrigerators and awaiting their return for their doses.
Thank you. In relation to the question about community spread and whether or not that would retard the opening of the country, let me first say that we said all along it was only a matter of time before we developed community spread. It was inevitable. And so when it happened, we were not surprised, but we were prepared. Now, unlike many other countries across the globe who developed community spread, rising cases and death, and had to vaccinate themselves out of it, including the great United States, including the UK, we were prepared such that we were able to keep the virus at bay and had our population sufficiently vaccinated such that when community spread occurred, we had a significant proportion of the population vaccinated. You heard that about 62.5% of the population have received their first dose, and that gives them a 76% protection against severe disease and death. You heard that 24% of the population is fully vaccinated, and that gives them 100% protection against death and an 84% protection against severe disease. And also, there's a significant reduction in the chance of one passing the virus onto someone else, between 63 to 83%. Now, yes, we are in community spread, but we follow science and we follow the data. And the CMO noted that from when we had the outbreak, we've had 30 positive cases, and in the testing, we've done 3,014 tests, which gives us a positivity rate of 0.9. Now, what does that mean? When the positivity rate is high, it means that the virus is circulating in your community. And the World Health Organization recommends that if you have a positivity rate greater than 5%, then it is not time for you to be relaxing or opening up your country. We have a positivity rate of less than 1. That is 0.9%, which means that we are getting a handle on the control of things. And so with this low positivity rate and the very high vaccination rate that we have in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, there should be no retardation to the progress that we have envisaged. And so I don't see this being a hindrance to us moving forward with the opening. What is important, though, we keep saying that individually and collectively, we all have to play a part, because sometimes persons will come and ask, why don't you close down the country? But then I ask, why don't you put on your mask? Why don't you hand sanitize? Why don't you go and vaccinate, knowing that the vaccination is what has proven scientifically to get us out of this situation, and that the vaccines are safe and effective. And so the solution and the gate towards opening is in all of our hands. We can singularly do what is necessary. And the last point I want to make is this. This virus, your action affects every single one. If you are hypertensive and decide not to take your medication, that affects you and you only. And so you have a choice whether or not you take your medication. But if you have a disease that is highly infectious, yes, you may choose not to vaccinate, but I can choose not to be in your space within 6 feet so that I can catch the virus. So if I have a private office, and I know that if you come into my private office and you infect me and my staff, I would have to close down my business for 14 days and might go out of business, not be able to pay my mortgage, not be able to feed my family. I have the decision to make whether or not I would allow you in that business. And so with choices comes consequences. And so we can't say we can voluntarily decide not to get vaccinated, but you want to impose your risk on me and my business and my family and the country. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to use this opportunity to underscore the importance of the COVID-19 prevention and control measures. So in essence, the virus is circulating, and once we leave our homes, we need to protect ourselves from the virus. You need to place your face mask on, keep it on over your nose until you get back home. You're going into a workplace, a business place, please wear your face mask and hand sanitize. Now, we are providing oversight to the contact tracing, and so a lot of contacts, they are working in business entities, government offices, and there are implications in terms of persons in those entities having to go into self-quarantine or go into quarantine at a government facility for 14 days. And so you need to protect yourself and even prevent yourself being traced and have to go into quarantine. So it's very important you keep your face mask on, keep a bottle of hand sanitizer in your possession at all times, make sure your hands are sanitized after touching high-touch surfaces, and maintain an adequate distance between everybody. As of now, consider everyone positive until otherwise proven, and protect yourselves from them. Thank you.
We will hear from Commissioner Brandy. Mr. Brandy, I think that question, and then we will have Minister Grant. I think those are the...
President, good morning. For the reporter from WinFM, the two cases are still pending before the court. Does that please you?
Minister Grant.
A pleasant good morning. I understand the question to be, what is CASPA's vaccination requirement? I first want to indicate that the matter pertaining to SCASPA and its vaccination policy was posited to the staff in excess of 2 months ago. At that meeting, the staff knew that on June the 1st, certain requirements were going to be put in place. As far as I can recall, being there, the only pushback at the staff level was to whether or not, when they were going to do the RT-PCR test, who was going to be responsible for the payment thereof. SCASPA is run by a board of which I'm not a part. The board came to certain decisions because they recognized that the throughput at the ports of entry was very significant. 150,000 plus through the airport, 1 million plus through the seaport. And hence they were on the front line of the persons who would come into direct contact with the most exposed persons. In fact, as I speak, 17 of the workers at SCASPA are in quarantine. In fact, as I speak, we have an intrusion of positivity in shed number 2. As I speak, there is a particular company in this federation which interacts on a daily basis with SCASPA. The entire staff is in quarantine as I speak. I would like to adopt what Dr. Wilkinson said in his last minute or two of his presentation, which is, at the end of the day, I, as a vaccinated individual, will now have to ask myself if I'm going to allow an unvaccinated individual to come within my space. As I said, SCASPA is an independent entity. It is not directed by the cabinet as far as I'm aware. And I can also say, on the last occasion in which the Attorney General spoke, the Attorney General knew that that matter was not a new matter, and it was a matter that was in that domain over a month. We await, that's the cabinet, await the policy from the Attorney General's chambers. I can say that 2 months ago, when the position of vaccinations were first posited to the staff, we were at 6% of persons vaccinated. I can tell you that as of this morning, the vaccination rate at SCASPA is at 62%. 62% and counting. I suspect the very next time that I'll be here present, I can say to you, we are at 70%. And I can say to you, it is by no magic that we got to this position. It is because individually and collectively, SCASPA recognize that the country collectively is bigger than us individually. And so I leave it there.
Do we have any further questions from the media?
Good morning again, Devon Cornelius, WinFM. Is the government considering any relief for the arts and entertainment industry, particularly for those registered entities and individuals affected by the COVID-19 restrictions? And in regards to the response by Mr. Grant, it was not quite clear, so just trying to seek some clarification. Because I'm looking at the Facebook page of the St. Christopher A and Seaports Authority, and there's a notice here, if I may. It says, the St. Christopher A and Seaports Authority, SCASPA, wishes to advise the public that effective June 1, 2021, all persons wishing to conduct business at the port's facilities, both A and C, must present proof of COVID-19 vaccination or a valid negative RT-PCR test taken within the past 14 days. It says this decision has become...
That road, please, sir.
Pardon?
let's not go down that road. The cabinet has not endorsed that policy.
Right, so I'm
Right, so
asking for clarification.
Right. So there is no endorsement of that policy.
Right.
And that has been communicated to SCASPA. The Attorney General will develop a policy from which all entities will get their guidance. All state corporations will use that as their guidance. That is where we are at in that one.
Thank you.
Okay.
Again, Glenn Bart from SKN Newsline. Mr. Prime Minister, the SIDF, that foundation, could you comment on its current status and how is it now contributing to the diversification of the economy, given the fact that COVID-19 has made such a big impact on the economy? What is its current direction? Secondly, a local businessman is distressed over a container that is owned by an adjacent business at the camp's commercial site. He told SK Newsline that he reported that safety issue, that safety hazard to the planning unit, which then wrote to the owner of the container indicating that the container is in an illegal position. He said, however, 6 months has passed and the container has not been removed, and the gentleman said he's losing business because of the hazard to his employees and to customers. He doesn't know what else to do, and he has asked us if we can assist him, and so we are asking on his behalf, since the owner of that container apparently or seems to have ignored the planning unit directive, what else can this businessman do? Finally, in my questioning, considering the existence of the tripartite arrangement on matters involving the workforce in St. Kitts and Nevis, how would you respond to the claim made by a representative of the Trades and Labor Union that they have not been included in decision-making processes with regards to the COVID-19 policies, while the Chamber of Industry and Commerce has been included in decision-making on matters related to the workforce? Again, your response in the context of the tripartite arrangement that exists. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again, Shani Carby from ZIZ News. Are there any plans to procure any other vaccines apart from AstraZeneca? I believe I saw a report that Jamaica and I believe Guyana getting Johnson & Johnson. And this question is from Minister Grant. Can we have an update on the arbitrary proceedings over the second cruise pier construction, please? Thank you.
Thank you. In relation to the SIDF, that entity we know operated in a certain manner. The SIDF basically is on a phasing out, if you will. It has certain assets. It has a number of legal issues which are being dealt with. So SIDF as an entity remains. We have since in terms of the CBI program, what we call the Sustainable Growth Fund, which provide the vehicle for the contribution option of that program, which was formerly pursued through the SIDF. But the SIDF exists as an entity in law, and it has a board. The board is managing the assets and the liabilities of that particular foundation, largely some legal issues involving the loan to Christophe Harbour and several other issues of that nature. The SIDF would have lent some resources, and those resources have to be recouped. So that process is taking on its course. The principal options available now in the program are the real estate option, the sustainable growth fund option in terms of the donation, and we have introduced an alternative option, alternative investment option for real estate and other activities that usually or is expected to generate a framework, if you will, for public-private partnership in certain strategic investment in the country, perhaps in infrastructure and other projects that need to be undertaken, and to provide a vehicle for private participation and for them to be able to have their resources, some confidence that they will be able to recoup their resources, which they must bring upfront to support these public sector activity. In terms of the planning unit issue which you have just raised, I would recommend that after, if you can give the name of the gentleman, we have the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Sustainable Development. She will, of course, follow up with respect to the, what we will more popularly refer to as the building board, to get their side of the story and to do what is necessary in the circumstance. In relation to the matter to do with the labor union and its saying that it is not involved, that one I can substantiate. The labor union is part, for example, of the tripartite committee. And in that committee, Minister Wendy Phipps has led several discussions with them related to the impact of COVID-19, related to, for example, the implications of the pandemic for the Protection of Employment Act and other issues of that nature. If they were absent, I can't say, but Minister Phipps, yes? They were present. So they have been involved. I am aware that the chairperson of the National Task Force for COVID-19, Mr. Abdias, have had several conversations, interactions with representatives from the union, both formally and informally, in office and out of office, on matters of concerns. We would welcome a constructive labor union being involved in the deliberations of the task force. The approach we have taken is that it must be all of society, all who are willing to make a constructive approach to help us deal with the pandemic. We are welcoming them to participate. If they require a special audience, there's a mechanism and a vehicle for the management of the COVID-19 to which all entities look to. And we did that deliberately to give it the sense of a apolitical nature. That is, it wasn't a political thing. It is not Timothy Harris vaccination program. It's not Team Unity vaccination program. It's everybody's vaccination program. The pandemic knows no color, no politics, no race, no income bracket. It doesn't respect whether you're a student in a primary school or early childhood setting. It doesn't respect whether you're a doctor, lawyer, beggarman, or thief. It doesn't respect anyone. So all of us have to come together to be able to fight it. And we keep saying that. We have had audience, for example, with all the political parties in the last, 6 weeks, Attorney General? All of them. The Labour Party, headed by Dr. Douglas. The Nevis Reformation Party, headed by Dr. Hodge. The CCM, the People's Labour Party, and all the other parties came together at that session, to the best of my knowledge, and they gave their input. This is an ongoing exercise. In fact, the task force is very flexible, very open. It has met with persons from the Sports Association. And so it is an open house. If the union wants to play a constructive role to get information, I would invite it to go through the task force, which is the structure that has been set up not only from a practical point of view, but it has legal standing to assist us in the management. And we do welcome the union as a genuine representative body of workers to come on board and to play a full and constructive role. So we are open to that. We have never denied. And the evidence I have adduced would have indicated that it is not the full story, that they have been involved, that they have been given audience, and we continue to be open for them to be able to meet and to have their input on that matter. We have set up the structure of the National Task Force and various other entities as creatures of law to provide the formal and appropriate mechanism to bring efficiency and efficacy in our management of the pandemic. So that is available. Ms. Clark posed two questions. One, I think, was Minister Grant. He will address that particular question.
Good morning again. I think the question really was what is to give an update on the arbitration, was it that? As it stands now, we are awaiting the decision from the arbitrators. We are expecting it any moment now. They had indicated that the decision would come back to the end of May, early June. So I suspect any time now we'll await the decision from the tribunal. Thank you. There was a question posed, however, with respect to the cruise industry and how are we going to favor now that we are into community spread, I think it was. The question was. We have been in a dialogue with the cruise industry over several weeks and months. In fact, St. Kitts and Nevis, we had put the position forward to them many months ago that if we were to begin or to restart the industry, we would only do what we termed bubble tours, which meant that we have, I think, about 4 or 5 signature tours. For example, a Brimstone Hill, Panoramic View, Caribel Boutique, I think, tours. Those we are going to do in a bubble, meaning the tours will be booked and the persons exiting the ship will go from the ship to the particular mode of transportation to the facility that's providing the bubble tour. So for example, if it is Brimstone Hill, it's from the ship to the mode of transportation to Brimstone Hill and back. Now, we had several months ago or weeks spoken to the persons who are within that bubble, for example, a Brimstone Hill, and were assured that all the persons who would be working on any particular day by, let's say, Brimstone Hill, will all be vaccinated. So really, all the passengers and crew who are coming in are vaccinated, and they are coming into contact with all vaccinated persons. The normal case prior to COVID was that they come off the ship and they integrate into Port Zante and into Bastia. That is not going to happen in this first phase. They would not be allowed to integrate into Port Zante in the first phase, at least in the first couple of weeks. Neither are they going to be able to integrate into Bastia. So, in short, the passengers and crew who will be on the ships that are coming will not be in contact with persons who are not vaccinated. I should say, however, as the scheduling goes, we are expected to have 32 calls between now and September, I think it is, 32 calls. The first call, as I'm advised, is June the 16th. So we should expect Celebrity Millennium on June 16th. When we came here on the last occasion when I spoke, we had indicated that Seaborn would have come on July the 17th. That has now moved up to Celebrity Millennium, June 16th. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grant, for answering those questions. We have the question in relation to Johnson and Johnson. Dr. Cameron Wilkerson's here. He will have something to say on that, and I will invite Minister Nisbet, who is just back from a meeting, to add any further insights with respect to this particular matter after. All right.
I just want to put the answer to the question into context, because sometimes we ask questions and they are looked at in a vacuum. To date, you heard that 1.9 billion doses of vaccines have been administered into the arms of persons, and of these 1.9 billion, only 0.3 have been administered into the arms of persons from low-income countries, and some countries have not started their vaccination program. So we here in St. Kitts, we have been fortunate. You have also heard that the best vaccine is the one that you get when you show up for your vaccination. And here in St. Kitts, we are only using WHO-approved vaccines. And so the vaccine that you get, you know, it is safe and it is effective. Vaccines are a scarce commodity globally, but we said that we will continue to try and secure vaccines. We still have vaccines left, and we're going to continue to vaccinate persons down until the 30th of this month. Now, if we say that we are continuing to try to secure vaccines, and we are only going to be using vaccines that are approved by the World Health Organization, it means that this includes Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and whichever one becomes available to us through the different platforms, that's what we will be using. Just a couple of minutes ago, a news flash came out saying that the Biden administration will be donating about 80 million doses of vaccines globally. 75% of them will go through the COVAX facility, of which we have signed on to, and 25% will go to areas around the globe that have been hit hardest and are fighting with this crisis. When I scroll down to see whether or not we'll qualify for those persons in the 25%, I did not see our name there, because we are doing well compared to a number of places around the globe. And so we need to put things into context, and whether after the 30th of June, we get Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, Moderna, we will be thankful. But what we don't want is to say we're going to get X now, and that becomes the news line, and people start to speak about, oh, they prefer X, Y, and Z. As I said, the best one you get is one that is World Health approved, and when you show up, you get it into your arms. I have family who live in the United States. When they have their vaccination date, they don't know when they show up whether they're going to get Pfizer, Moderna, or Johnson & Johnson. They're thankful for what they get when they show up. We need to be thankful here.
Good morning. Thank you very much. And just following on from Dr. Wilkinson, as would have indicated previously, the Ministry of Health is pursuing all options available to us in order to be able to benefit from receiving more doses of vaccine. And the Prime Minister would have indicated that we would talk more about Johnson & Johnson. Indeed, we are exploring an option to the African Medical Supply Platform to be able to receive doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So that option is available to us in St. Kitts and Nevis. In terms of AstraZeneca, We continue to work with the COVAX facility. This morning I would have attended a meeting of the PAHO region, and we discussed the next round of doses to be delivered through the COVAX facility. At that time, COVAX was only looking at the doses that they have procured themselves outside of what the U.S. would have donated. So at that time, they would have indicated that they do have doses and ready for the next round of being able to provide another 20% to persons, the countries that would have signed up to COVAX, which means for us another 21,600 through that channel in COVAX. They have given a time frame of between July and September. The specific dates will be communicated afterwards. However, after that meeting, we would have been informed, as the medical chief of staff would have indicated, that the U.S. have committed to providing vaccines as well. Amongst that amount is 7 million that would be allocated to the COVAX facility, and they indicated the countries in which the COVAX facility should prioritize in the delivery of those 7 million. CARICOM was included as part of that donation. So we are expecting to receive some donations from the United States when they provide that or release those donations to the COVAX facility. They're only using the COVAX facility because the COVAX already have a means of being able to get the vaccines to the various countries, so they're using that mechanism in order to be able to share their donations. And so those are the options that we have available to us in terms of being able to receive vaccines. There's another option that we're looking back through a donation as well, and so as we get more information on that one, we will be able to give more information. And that is why the CMO would have indicated that she's positive that we will be able to receive doses so that persons who have their first dose now would be able to receive their second dose within 12 weeks, because all information is that we would be able to receive some doses. As a matter of fact, the U.S. said the 7 million would be available by the end of June, so we should be expecting some word on that soonest. In terms of the relief for the arts and entertainment, since about sometime last year, I think it would have been late November, early December, the ministry with responsibility for entertainment did engage the various persons within the entertainment space. We were trying to put together a proposal to be able to assist them or see how we can put a proposal together to assist them in terms of providing some relief. That meant that would have required information from them. We went as far as creating a survey for them to complete so that we can get pertinent information from them, including their business registration, etc. We have not been successful in receiving the information back. We have been attempting time and time again to reach out to them again, requesting that information, as that information would be necessary in order for us to be able to proceed to the next step. And we have not been successful in that. And so that is why at this point they have not heard anything further. But we continue to reach out to them and express to them the importance of them providing us with this information. We'd have collected their emails and numbers through PACE and other Department of Culture, and so we would have reached out to a wide range of persons within the entertainment industry. But of course, there are things that we would have to clarify first before we can just say we're giving out relief to these entertainers. We had to make sure there was verification as well, but they are not being forthcoming with the information that we need. So hopefully from this press conference they would think about it and reconsider providing us the information required in order for us to be able to make the next step for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Nisbet. As we wind down, I would want to invite Minister Phipps, who is the Minister with responsibility for the tripartite relationships within the country, that is the union or workers' representative, the Chamber of Industry and the government. So her ministry leads on that, and she has been involved with some of the high-level discussions there as they relate to COVID, to perhaps give a perspective on that. She's also instrumental at the level of the task force and with our Attorney General co-chairs. Perhaps she can give a view about how one gets to meet with the task force, to share a view, and so on with respect to the management of COVID-19. So, Minister Phipps, I invite you, please.
Good afternoon to everyone. The Prime Minister, in my opinion, would have done a very clear job of explaining the role of the COVID-19 task force insofar as being accessible to the rank and file of our community in terms of persons who would be wishing to explore certain options in terms of activities that can be held, policy formulation at the organizational level. We have met with sports authorities and various other groups. We have met with the private sector. We have also met with NGOs throughout the course of the life of this task force, which is now going into approximately 15 months. To reinforce what he has already said, insofar as the comment or concern or complaint, whichever way you want to look at it, from the St. Kitts Nevis Trades and Labor Union is concerned, the same open door policy exists. Nevertheless, the Prime Minister is also correct in that the National Tripartite Committee on International Labour Standards is the appropriate vehicle through which concerns relative to development of COVID-19 policies should be channeled. Since assuming the post of Minister with responsibility for labour in June of last year, we would have met regularly with the National Tripartite Committee. Of course, we would have wished that we could meet more regularly, but at the same time, we are in the middle of a pandemic, nevertheless. And all of the members on that National Tripartite Committee, which is made up equally of representation from the private sector, representing employers, workers who are represented by unions, and then the government's interests or labor administration being represented by the Department of Labor. And we would meet occasionally as is necessary to look at international labor standards, the application of same, considerations with regards to the ratification of new conventions, reporting on the core conventions to which St. Kitts and Nevis would have become signatory over time ever since our joining of the ILO in 1996. And of course, naturally, the COVID-19 pandemic would very much have been a front and center topic of these tripartite meetings since they began around August of 2020. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the most recent of those meetings would have also been held in the month of May. The matter of the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, would have been an agenda item at the insistence of government, largely because of the lessons we are learning coming out of the pandemic, insofar as its impact on our current labor laws are concerned. At the front end of his presentation, the Prime Minister would have mentioned the sum of in excess of $33.7 million, I think, that has been spent out in severance claims. And that brings me to the point of the legislation as it relates to the labor laws in St. Kitts and Nevis, because the core piece of legislation, which is the Protection of Employment Act, would speak to the eligibility of applicants to access the severance payment fund once they have become displaced, and that period of displacement extends beyond 12 weeks of a layoff. As a result of that, we would have looked carefully at the current formulation. The legal department, led by the Attorney General, is assisting us in that measure. And even though we would have had the Protection of Employment Act in place since 1986, of course, no one would have envisioned a pandemic at that point. But it is what it is, and it is now facing us. And as a result of that, we have recognized that there are certain loopholes in the legislation. We are also recognizing at the same time that now is also the time to deal with a postponed matter, a protracted matter, in the development of an unemployment insurance fund that has been on the table for several years, being led by the Social Security Administration. And that too, when completed, would have given relief, and if it was in place before, would have also provided relief for those persons in excess of, I think, 2,500 applicants thus far give or take, that have accessed the severance payment fund for relief. Nevertheless, I say all of that to say this, and that is that we have put before the tripartite committee the need for the amendments that are critical to the Protection of Employment Act. We would have gone even further in terms of sharing with them a preliminary list that has not even gone to cabinet yet, but was open in the interest of transparency for the tripartite committee members to look at as some of the areas where we would wish to address the loopholes that exist in the law. Some of these loopholes, for example, would require us to look at matters of failure to give termination notices, and yet at the same time, persons are still being eligible for severance. The law provides for that, but at the same time, we would wish that that would be tightened up. There are other issues such as persons making multiple applications when they have multiple employers, but not necessarily a case where those employers may be compliant in terms of their obligations for Social Security, in terms of the payments of contributions to workers. We've also looked at other issues such as seasonal work, because in the eyes of the law, persons who are employed on the basis of seasonal work are not eligible to collect severance because it's understood that it's contract work. For example, a construction worker working on a house where a builder promises a homeowner that you're going to finish it in 7 or 8 months. Yes, you expect that a project of that nature has a finite life, but then at the end of the project, it should not be an issue of severance. So it should be contract driven. So these are some of the loopholes that we are looking at, and at the same time looking at the ongoing impact on the severance payment fund that would have been brought about in 2014 by the institution of the long service gratuity, for which the previous government did not make any provisions at capitalization. And as it is right now, it is only applicable to workers in manufacturing and the hotel sector. That is also something we are looking at. Should it be something that should be open to all sectorial workers, not confined to just the hotel sector as well as the manufacturing sector? And all of these issues we have put in the interest of transparency out on the table for the benefit of every member of the tripartite committee to look at. So again, as the Prime Minister indicated, if, for example, the Trades and Labor Union, who represents a sector of our workforce, because they're not the only union in this country, they're also not the largest union, and by definition of the ILO, they're also not the most representative grouping of employers in the country by virtue of the contraction of their size. We have an open door policy. All that is required is for the Trades and Labor Union or any other interested party to simply officially write to the chairman of the COVID-19 task force, explain your issues, and then request an audience. And once we have met and discussed it, the appropriate audience would be granted with the full cohort of the task force present. So we welcome any and all who would wish to meet with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Phipps, for that fulsome intervention, speaking not only to what is, but to the future policy initiatives that the government will bring. An important one relate to the payment of unemployment benefits, so that should we have another adverse development like the one we are now fighting, we would not have the challenges of difficulty in dealing with the fund that had been left undercapitalized by the former administration. We have invited actuarial support in a revision of the severance fund arrangements to see how best we could put that particular fund at a better place for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. One of the areas that has been impacted significantly in recent weeks has been our education sector as a result of the COVID-19. I therefore want to invite the Minister of Education to make a brief input as it relates to education and more particularly our school.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Good morning to all. I actually anticipated a question from the media in relation to education, but in the absence of that, I will make a quick intervention. Just under 2 weeks ago, on the 24th of May, through a joint statement by the Ministries of Health and Education, a decision was communicated that schools would be closed, schools being early childhood centers, primary and secondary schools. Pursuant to a statement that I would have made last Friday, the 28th of May, indicating the position as it relates to schools, I am now making a further statement, and this comes as a result of the recent communication and confirmation of community spread of COVID-19 here in St. Kitts and Nevis. The Ministry of Education has taken the decision that we will not resume school for the purposes of face-to-face instruction for the remainder of the school year. This is as a result of, as I said, the community spread, and the fact that we as a ministry do not think that the risk is worth it to open schools in light of everything that is happening, bearing in mind that we would be closing schools naturally at the end of this month. The result of this is that for primary school children, the curriculum reform that we have been undergoing for some time now has allowed for continuous assessment of those children throughout the academic year. And so they will not have any end of term or end of year examinations. Their performances will be based and assessed based on the continuous assessment that has taken place over the course of the year. In relation to secondary schools, last week we would have naturally begun examinations for some of those students. And so those students who would have been preparing prior to that and even during the last 2 weeks of lockdown or of closure through the online modality will still be able to write their common examinations. The ministry will indicate to parents and students the modality in which they will have that opportunity. We will also be prioritizing our fifth form students who are about to take or write the CXC examinations. A recent release from CXC would have indicated that those examinations have been pushed back in relation to their start date to the 28th of June. And so we will prioritize the preparation of our fifth form students in terms of face-to-face interaction for preparation and writing of those exams. The early childhood centers will remain closed until further notice. This again is as a result of the community spread of the COVID-19 virus, and we are awaiting for the results of testing that has taken place and the advice of the Ministry of Health. So I just thought that that information would be pertinent at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have come to the end. I want to thank the representatives of the media who have come forward and who have helped us in better informing the residents and citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis. We hope the information provided has been helpful and useful. Thank you again. May God continue to protect and bless the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Thank you.
cash, credit, vouchers, lunches, spa dates, digital merchandise, and more. Plus, take the top half of your scratch cards to any of our retail stores to qualify for even more prizes in the big draw. Stay tuned to our social media pages to find out how to double or even triple your chances to scratch and match. Top up or pay your bill today. Get scratching, get matching. Digicel, better